you ready for another Soul Finder, Kathy?
You bet. Let's go.
Okay, today we're going to talk about creating chaos.
All right.
And it's something we talked about in the previous episode, but it's also something that I think a lot of people thrive on chaos.
Oh, yeah. They live on drama.
I've always wondered why that is.
It's kind of like the adrenaline rush.
That people just need it to, they need to constantly be either creating or solving problems. They can't just...
Well, I'm thinking more along the drama line and the chaos of disruption.
Okay.
People are addicted to it because they haven't healed their stored emotion that attracts that. And that's what keeps us in the low frequency.
The chaos does?
Well, yeah, the unhealed stored emotion that attracts the chaos it feeds off of it.
Okay, we should go ahead and do this just for people that maybe this may be the first episode they listen to. Low frequency, high frequency.
Okay, so we're all on the path, as I see it and believe today, we're all on a path of evolving our soul when we come into the planet Earth. So whether you believe in reincarnation or not, my theory is we all kind of start out in the sandbox when we're born, and that sandbox I also will refer to as quicksand, but it's a lower frequency as we start to get through our childhood and through victimhood of our environment. Then we start to heal ourselves in order to start evolving our soul to higher frequencies. So a lower frequency person is just someone that is brand new on the path. A higher frequency person is someone that has done healing work and doesn't have as much stored emotion in their energy field as the low frequency does.
Okay, so it doesn't make one any better than the other.
Oh, no, not at all.
But it does make one more equipped to handle.
Their soul is more evolved, yes, and they don't have the triggers and they don't have the needs the same needs that the lower frequency has.
Does that to you mean, and I'm putting words in your mouth, so don't let me do this. That's why I'm clarifying and asking. That people at a higher frequency tend to be able to rise above the chaos?
Yes. Yes, I would say that would be a statement I would agree with, yes.
And it's interesting to me, and I always do this, make these episodes about me, and tell me if you think I'm wrong.
Okay.
I've got thick skin.
I know.
I do believe I'm based on your definitions. Today, what I believe is, I love that, is that I am at a higher frequency.
Yeah, than the majority of the people on this planet? Absolutely.
And I do think that one of my strengths is that I can rise above the chaos.
Right.
But I also think that could be a weakness because it may keep me from having a sense of urgency when there is chaos. And I do recognize, and you can tell me how wrong I'm in this, and I hope I am, but maybe I'm not. I do recognize that there are times where I feel like I need to create chaos in my own life just to move forward.
Okay, very good point. So I knew I'd lose that thought. Creating chaos does, look at your hospital stay. Did it not create evolvement in your life?
It definitely did.
Your soul?
But I didn't do that on purpose, though.
I know, but that's a different kind of chaos, is what I was going to allude to. The other chaos, and you saying that, here's my thought. You made this statement that maybe you needed to be more in the chaos to be aware of it, that it was happening. That's where some people say I go too far. But you create the world you live in, and your world can have the chaos or not. Say yours doesn't, but this one over here does. they're all coexisting together at the same time, but you don't see this chaos because it's not in your world.
Mm. I kind of like that. The other thing, though, is when I see chaos
Mm-hmm.
and don't react to it the way other people react to it.
Now, define chaos so we're on the same page.
Chaos is everything's a mess. Chaos is everything's a mess and needs to be fixed.
Okay, what is everything?
It can be any sorts of examples. Business-wise, it can be you don't know how you're going to pay your employees. You don't know where your next where your next revenues can come from.
Chaos of the business.
You've got an expense that you didn't expect or plan for.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of things.
Okay.
And where I've created chaos in my business,
mm-hmm.
and I think this is kind of a good example, and I may be using the wrong words, but where I've created chaos is I've got a nice little business going.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I could continue doing exactly what I'm doing
mm-hmm.
and be fine.
Uh-huh.
But if I want to move forward, I've got to take some chances.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to get other people involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to take on maybe some expenses I'm not ready for.
Okay.
And I'll grow into it. Chaos on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one. On a personal level is I've always heard, and I do agree with it, that if you wait till you can afford children to have children, you'll never have children. So you go ahead and you
jump in,
and then you figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of chaos. There we go. Jumping in and then figuring it out, rather than figuring it out and then jumping in.
Right.
Is the difference between chaos and non-chaos.
Right.
And sometimes you need to be forced.
Oh, yes.
Well,
that's why the universe will throw something in your path if you're not, in my opinion, what I believe today, if you're not doing your work and you do have the desire to evolve your soul and you have the desire to fulfill your soul's purpose and you're not getting there, you're going to get something thrown in your life to try to wake you up and get you moving.
Say that one more time. That's great.
Probably can't.
Okay, let me try and repeat it then. Is that if you need to move forward and you're not taking the action yourself, then the universe, if you're a person of faith, the Lord will throw something at you. If you're not, the universe will, something's going to get thrown in your path that you're going to have to overcome, that you're going to have to deal with.
Because that's the only way people grow, is from obstacles. A lot of times, because we become complacent. Like you were saying, your job is at a comfortable level. So what is the desire to move forward?
And this may be a very elementary comparison, but if you want to build muscle, what do you have to do? You have to work out, and what working out is doing is literally tearing down your muscle.
Yes. So
it grows back stronger.
Right.
And, I think that's a good lesson, a natural lesson, that same thing with your ability to deal with issues, is you're going to be dealt issues, you're going to be dealt obstacles.
Yes.
Whether you create them yourself or they get thrown at you, your ability to, I hate to be generic, but your ability and ultimate level of success is going to be a direct result of how you handle failure.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And I think the sooner people figure that out, and here's a problem I have, is to me, I think that's become so elementary that I don't understand how other people don't understand that.
Right. And I would agree with that.
It's become so, it just makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm. It's no different than anybody that knows their vocation and they're trying to explain it to somebody that doesn't know it. They forget all the terms and all the knowledge they already have, and they can't explain it to the beginner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where you're at. You've already accepted and know that, and it's hard for you to tell someone that doesn't know that.
And I think it's also hard for someone who doesn't know that to understand it.
Oh, of course.
And I think that if you're going to try and explain that to someone, you better be equipped to explain it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not going to, if you don't present it the right way,
they're going to misinterpret.
Yes. And you're going to look like you're judging or, and that's something I definitely don't want to do.
No, none of us do.
And if you want to, and we'll go back to the episode we did about, making other people's problems your problems, and, some of the fatal mistakes you make when you're trying to help people. One of the fatal mistakes could be you definitely don't want them to think you're judging them.
Oh, no, never. Or that you have expectations of them.
Mm-hmm. Because the minute you do that, to me, and you're veering off a little bit like we usually do, that's good for both sides if you're trying to help someone.
Mm-hmm.
Is not to judge them. It's good for me not to judge. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination.
No. Who is? We all fall back.
Because I think you do have to make some decisions that are going to be judgment decisions.
Yes, that's a different kind of judgment.
Yes.
There's variations of judgment, in my opinion. But the whole thing we're talking about here is symbolic of the phoenix bird. Burning down and then recreating.
Mm-hmm. And I think that as far as handling chaos, if you're equipped to handle chaos, it's going to be much better for you and the people around you.
Oh, yes. Than if you're not.
And part of being equipped to handle chaos is to know, it's just knowing it's going to happen.
Right.
There's nothing you can do to keep it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all in a matter of the way you deal with it.
Well, and that also depends on your level of healing. Because if your level of healing doesn't know how to deal with it, then you're going to falter back to your stored emotion that may put you in more chaos, may put you in fear of your life in this chaos. Mm-hmm. It may totally put you in anxiety where you can't even function.
Okay, but
you haven't healed to that level.
Here's something I think also happens, and I could be misjudging what goes on with me. But I think one of my weaknesses is I've gotten to the point where I don't recognize chaos in my life. I don't recognize problems because I don't look at them
as problems.
As problems.
Right, or as chaos, because it is just a flow of your life.
And I don't necessarily know if that's a
good thing
or a bad thing.
I think it's a good thing because you're seeing what's right instead of seeing what's wrong. If you start seeing chaos, you're seeing what's wrong.
But it can also, and maybe not, but I think I don't want to say I underreact to things, but I definitely don't overreact.
Do you have an example?
Yeah.
Good.
I've got a couple.
Okay.
Well, the hospital stay.
Okay.
I wake up from life support.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors come in and want to tell me what happened to me. What put me there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care one bit what put me there. It doesn't, I could not care less about what put me there.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them straight out, I don't want to waste my energy. I don't want to waste my time. All I care about is what's going to happen from this point forward.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas maybe I needed to be a little concerned about what did I do to put myself in that position.
Right.
But I was not concerned one bit. Another one, this hadn't happened in a while, but it had happened in a long time, so I'm hesitant to. But financially, you know, there were months where it's like, how am I going to pay my mortgage?
Mm-hmm.
That's something you probably should react to rather than just say, well, I'll find a way.
No, I disagree with you. You shouldn't react to that, because to manifest the money coming in, you've got to do what you did. You've got to say, oh, it's going to come.
Yeah.
And you have to believe it is, because if you don't believe it, it probably won't. If you get caught up in the chaos of it, saying, oh, I don't have money for my rent, how am I going to get money for my rent? Then you're creating the lack, and you're feeling the lack, and you're going to not be able to pay it. If you go with, oh, the money will come. I always pay my rent. It will be here. It has to come.
And it really is amazing. I think the money is a very easy example of,
because it's the biggest trigger.
And how things work. And you hear it in church all the time, and a lot of times it comes across as a sales pitch that the Lord will provide.
Oh.
And I don't like it when it comes across as a sales pitch.
Right, because it's you got to do your part.
But I do believe. And whether it's the Lord or I keep saying the universe.
I use
I don't
universe.
know how you want me to do it, but
I don't care how you say it.
well, that's a good point. But the whole thought, now we'll go faith-based, that the Lord is not going to give you a situation you can't handle.
Right.
That you're not equipped to handle, but you do have to handle it.
I tell my clients that all the time, because doing the work that I take them through is the hardest damn work you'll ever do, but it's the most rewarding. And I tell them that up front, and I say, if you're not in for the hard work, then you need to go. I said, the universe will never, ever, ever give you more than you can handle at a time, even though you think it is.
The comparison in faith-based, and it's probably the same in spiritual or is, and I don't have any kids, so I just have to trust. But as a parent, would you ever put your kid in a situation where you know he's not equipped and he's going to fail?
Well, that depends on the situation.
What do you mean?
If the situation was to teach him an easy lesson, and he could only get that by experience, then maybe.
Yeah, to teach him.
Then maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But that would be the only thing that's coming to mind right now, that I would put them in a situation where they're going to fail.
Well, I mean, when you do that, but the reason you're doing it is
to make
so
them stronger.
Yeah. So the situation you want to put him in a position or her in a position where bigger problems come up, they're not going to fail.
Right.
And so, yeah.
They have the tools to.
That's working it. That's the whole workout.
And see, that's where parents fail a lot, because parents try to protect their children while they're under their roof. Let's just arbitrarily use the age 18. So up until the age of 18, parents try to protect their children and not let them experience and make mistakes and fail, when that's the exact time they should be doing it. They should not be saying, oh, no, you can't go do that. No, you can't do that either, and controlling them to the point of suffocating them. They need to be letting them go try something, and then when they fail, feel free enough to come back to mom and dad and discuss it so that they can learn.
I love that. That's so. There's two things on that I want to touch on. I'll forget the second when I tell you the first, but the second, just remind me the word mentor.
Okay.
Okay. But the first situation, and I think I've talked about this on this podcast before, is one of the more interesting people I've ever spoken to in a podcast is a lady who was the wife of a pastor. And she was she had 3 kids, 3 sons, and the podcast was called Pardon This Mess. And it was a Christian parenting podcast. And it was hosted by a woman, Cynthia Yonoff, who was a mother herself, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great podcast about parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this woman on who is a pastor's wife, raised 3 boys that are all adults now. And she was giving advice. And Cynthia asked this woman, what are some of the mistakes she made as a parent? Because this lady was like the perfect parent. And she said, well, everyone makes mistakes. And I'm not going to list the mistakes because there's probably not enough time if I went individually.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell you the biggest mistake I made. And she said, the biggest mistake I made, and I'm paying the price for it right now, is I was fortunate to have 3 good sons. And they were good sons. Not only, and this is unheard of, I know, but not only would they come to me for advice, but they would follow my advice. And I know that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But all 3 of my sons, and I do give myself credit for raising them to where they felt comfortable enough.
To do that, yes.
And do that. So I give myself credit for that. But I was able to steer them away from any problems growing up because they would come to me for advice and I would have, and she kind of chuckled when she said this. She said, really, it's not that hard to know what a teenager should do when they're coming to you for advice. It's not like really complicated stuff. But she said, now all my sons are in their 30s. And I wake up just about every morning praying that my kids, because they're still my kids,
Mm-hmm.
are going to be equipped to handle adversity because they had none growing up. And I did not teach them how to handle adversity because I didn't let them have any adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And that scares me to death that I've raised 3 young adults now that just simply don't know how to handle a problem if it comes along.
Well, and isn't it a problem of how to feed yourself and how to wash your clothes and how to take care of yourself?
Well, I don't look at those as problems, but yeah.
I mean,
That's
is also stuff.
That's not what she was talking about.
I know,
but, yeah.
but that's a leg of that.
Mm-hmm.
Is we are having so many parents that just do everything for the kids and they get out on their own and they're lost.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Now the mentorship.
Yes.
One. This isn't what you were talking about, but I've got a ton. I was in sports talk radio, which is a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Tens of thousands of people just in the Metroplex want that job.
Right.
And so I get a lot of high school seniors, college kids, parents of high schoolers that say, my son knows all the stats and is a huge sports fan, and he'd be a great sports talk show host and want me to give them advice. And so last Saturday, I was with this family, took me out to lunch so that I could talk to them.
To the kids.
And their kid. And by the way, you don't have to buy me a lunch. I'm more than willing to give advice and talk about that. But the big piece of advice I give is find something else to do. Because there's just not that many jobs out there. Even if you're great, there's 24 sports talk show hosts.
Right.
Which is a lot in a major market like Dallas. The jobs just aren't there, and people hold on to those jobs. They don't give them up.
Right.
So
tell your story how you got yours.
Mine was just by accident.
Oh, really?
Yes. You know that story?
Let's hear it again. We've heard it once.
It was pure accident. I owned a convenience store / restaurant.
Uh-huh.
It was like a convenience store with a little cafe connected to it when I was like 23.
And you owned it?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
That's another interesting story.
We'll do that next episode. Go ahead.
But I had a partner that we bought the store for $35,000. Wasn't that much money. We borrowed every cent. And we were going to run it and fix it up and then flip it.
Mm-hmm.
And we ran it and realized we're making money, which is another story that does get into the soul finder type stuff.
Uh-huh.
But one of my customers, and if so, me and my partner sold it, and then I went back and bought it back a couple of years later from the guy we sold it to. But one of my customers was going through a real hard time. He had 3 kids. His wife left him with the 3 kids. He only had one part-time job producing a fantasy football radio show in like 1994 on an AM radio station. It paid $6 an hour, and he was working 6 hours a week on Sunday. I lent him some money and let him run a tab at my store, and he could never pay me back the cash, which is, whenever you lend people money, and that's not.
Or you should.
Yeah, that's not a complaint. I'm giving it to him, and
you're giving it to him without the expectation of really getting it back.
So I wasn't mad. It was no big deal. It wasn't a lot of money, but when he finally found a full-time job in the middle of football season, he had to give up the radio job on Sundays, and the program director at the station was not happy with him because the program director said, "Dude, you're leaving in the middle of football season. I'm a program director at a major market radio station where Monday through Friday is the important part of my programming schedule. I don't want to mess with weekends. Do you know someone who could take over without being trained?" And so he hooked me up with that program director, and the interview lasted like 10 minutes, and I got the job to produce for 6 hours on a Sunday. I fell in love with it. Ended up selling the store, and with those proceeds, I was able to live for a long period of time, making $6 an hour, dipping into my savings, until I was all exhausted and it was all gone, basically. And I was about to have to quit radio when I finally got a full-time offer in radio.
And how'd that come about? Were you applying? Did they come after you?
No, but everyone in radio, I was at the radio station I worked part-time at. And what I did was I made sure that when I was making $6 an hour, I made sure I was at that radio station physically as often as I possibly could be, meaning that for most of the time that I was there, I was not getting paid. And
like Monday through Friday, you mean?
Monday through Friday.
Or Saturday?
I would find excuses to be up there for 2 reasons. Well, actually 3. The main reason was so that I could be seen. Because I knew that was going to be important.
So you had a plan. You had an intention.
Yeah, I had a plan. I was very intentional about it. So I could be seen. I could get to know the people that are making. The other reason was not just to be seen, but to be seen working. And what I was doing, and it was work, it was back when the internet was first
starting.
And so what I would do, this is actually, as I'm telling a story, pretty good lesson. What I was doing and not getting paid for it was I was surfing the internet, printing sports stories from around the nation, and I would put together packets with the stories, because there was only one computer in the radio station that had internet access. And you can remember, I mean...
Oh, yeah. It was totally different.
And so when people saw me, I was only not being seen, but they're like, man,
he's doing something.
That dude's working. And then the other thing I was doing while I was working, in air quotes, putting together those packets was really... it was really overrated, first of all, because I would put together the packet and make copies, and I'd put them in all the sports talk show hosts' boxes, mailboxes. So they had all this information, and I got a lot of credit for that. And maybe I deserved credit for it, but even if I didn't deserve credit for it, I got the credit for it. And so I was doing everything in my power to be at the radio station and to be seen working, and to provide something of value. That was number one, with 1B, 1C, 1D. Number 2 was I wanted to be at that radio station in case the board op had a heart attack. And they needed someone to, now that never happened, but I knew there's a chance. And the way you can
get in is be there.
Yeah. You know, and part of having great ability is having availability.
Yes.
And I was going to be there in case there was an emergency or breaking news or anything like that. And then the third reason was I just loved it there. I just liked being there. So the third reason was wasn't going to do me any good at all. It's just because I liked being there.
So I got three questions.
Okay.
When did you start with the intention of being in there, doing the work, being seen, all of that?
When did I start? Like,
when did you have the intention to do that?
As soon as I knew that's what I wanted to do for my career.
And when did you decide that?
Within like 2 weeks.
Of filling in for that guy on Sundays?
Yeah.
That's when you decided?
Yeah.
How did you know to make that intention of being in there, doing something of service, giving to others?
That wasn't really that hard because I knew how I knew...
Who taught you that? Where did you learn it?
You know what? That's a great question.
I know. Because this is helping all my clients out there.
That is a fantastic question. Because I truly believe that I don't deserve credit for anything.
I know.
I truly am grateful that I was born with certain qualities that I didn't earn, that I didn't learn. I was just born with them.
Yes.
I'm grateful that I was born with an attitude of greatness,
right.
Not greatness, gratitude.
Right.
I hate cliche terms. I hate attitude of gratitude. I try not to say that. That's why I say greatness. But I've always been very grateful. And one of the things I'm very grateful for is that I was born with gratefulness. But I think that gave me the ability, as you're walking me through this, you can tell I'm thinking about this as I'm talking. But part of what I was given enabled me to learn certain things. And for example, the whole thing about the board app had a heart attack. I've always been very successful at jobs from day one.
Okay.
And that whole board app having a heart attack, I worked my way through high school and college at a restaurant called Purdy's Hamburgers, which is kind of like a Fuddruckers. And the owner was a great owner, fantastic owner, who took a lot of pride in being there for his employees. And took a lot of, he invested a lot.
Mentor to you all?
In the employees that he cared about.
So he was a good mentor to you all?
To the ones that wanted it. And one of the things, he didn't teach me this, just the lesson I got was I was a cook. And one Friday night, the lead cook got sick during the shift. And I had to take over. I was not prepared to take over, but there was no one else there
that could.
And I ended up doing somehow, some way.
You managed to do
a very good job. I don't know how. To be honest, to this day, I don't know how that worked out. But I was there, took over, did a good job that one night. Because if you had me replicate it again, I probably couldn't.
Probably like me talking, and I can't remember what I said.
And so that one night, being there, gave me a lot of credibility with the other manager or the managers, and the owner was there that night. And he saw me take over, and I got a lot of credit based on what I thought was pure luck that I somehow, some way, I was lucky to manage through that. But it gave everyone the indication that, hey, this dude's good. And then the other thing I would do, and this is on me, but I was born with it. It wasn't at that same restaurant. I actively tried to learn every position, which they didn't tell me to do that. But I wanted to know how to, how to wash dishes. I wanted to know how to bus tables.
Now, was that in order to fill in for it? What was where did the desire for that come from?
I wanted to be, and I'm still like this, I wanted to be the best employee I possibly could be.
Okay. Was that taught to you by your family?
No.
Or were you the black sheep of the family in that respect of that?
No,
belief?
I don't want to take anything away from my family.
Well,
but
no.
I truly believe that was something given to me at birth.
Okay. What about
that attitude?
Okay. So the gratitude, the wanting to be the best employee, you're calling these things birth. You had at birth.
And Kathy, let me tell you this too, as I'm thinking about it. I hate to interrupt you, but you're making me think out loud.
Supposed to.
The other thing that I know I was born with, and the reason that I was doing it, was because I've always been the type, and this makes me sound like I'm patting myself on the back, and I'm not. But I was a cook. And I knew that if I wanted to be the best cook possible, I needed to know, or at least have an understanding of what everyone else did.
Yes, I've always had that same understanding myself, because there is nothing worse than to work in a position where you have a manager that gets in your business telling you how to do your job and they don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah. And I wasn't even thinking about being in management at that point. I was thinking about, okay, I want to be the best cook I can be. So I need to know what goes on, what happens after I cook that hamburger. How does it get to the customer? And how can I make your job easier?
And more efficient.
Yeah.
I was always after efficiency. Make this smoother, quicker.
And to this day, I've hired a couple people here. And like one of the guys that I hired, he's great. His name's Tony. I want you to meet him. He's got Asperger's. Have I told you about Tony?
You mentioned him.
Okay.
That's all I know.
And Tony is once I get him trained, my goal for Tony is he's going to work from home and be completely independent contractor. And I'm going to send him audio, and he's going to edit it. But what I'm doing with him now, other than training him on the audio, and it goes back to like when I said worked at the restaurant as a cook and knowing what everyone else does, I want him up here to see the clients.
Yes.
And to meet my clients for two reasons.
Well, he has to. Yes, that makes him a better editor.
I want him to know who he's working for ultimately.
Yes.
And to put faces on the names. And I want him to know he's accountable to these people that are my clients that are paying us money to produce a top-notch product. I want him to have that in his head. I also want my clients to be comfortable that here's who eventually, I'm not taking myself out of the equation, but he's going to eventually be editing your podcast, and I'm not going to let it happen until I'm comfortable. And I want you to be comfortable with him also. But I want him to see the whole operation. Now, it's kind of, I may have gone a little bit overboard with him because he's ready to take over. But I want my people, even if they're never going to do anything with clients at all, even if they're going to be completely behind the scenes, I want them to see that. And so that's another reason that I wanted to know how to do everything in the entire operation.
So the one thing I want to go back to is when you kept mentioning you were born with this. I believe that everyone comes in with their own treasure chest of gifts, and this was your gifts. You have the gift of gratitude.
Yeah.
Because it comes so natural, and from what you say, you've had it all your life.
Yeah, I don't remember
having to learn gratitude. You don't remember having to say, oh, I need to be grateful for this. I need to change my thoughts and see what's right and be grateful. You don't remember that at all.
No one
See,
bit.
that's a gift. That's what I call a gift. It comes natural, and it's something you didn't have to practice or, well.
Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect at it.
Oh, no, I get that. None of us are. Anybody that tries to say they are is got a problem, because we all falter. That's just human nature. That's the human experience, that we're not always perfect. That's another problem if you try to be a perfectionist.
Yeah.
But that's what you had, the gifts of. Actually, I think you also have the gift of the give and the receive, the wanting to give, to help people. That's natural to you.
Yeah.
And that is what has helped you be able to manifest all of the things that you've had in your life. Because with that makes it flow in and out easily.
But there's some selfishness to that too.
What do you mean?
Okay. On a shallow level, one that people can understand, the better I can make Tony,
right,
the better it's going to be for me.
Right.
On a very direct level.
Yes.
The better I can make any employee.
Yes.
The better it's going to be for me.
Right.
Now, on an indirect level, I truly believe, and Zig Ziglar said it, but I hate it when people do this, because, and I love Zig Ziglar, and I know
I've heard of him,
yeah. But insert any motivational speaker or life coach or whatever. Well, so-and-so said this. That's not their original thought. They just put it in different words. And what he's famous, one of his famous sayings, because he says it over and over again, and it is completely true, but I don't like, and I've met Zig Ziglar. He's passed away now. He's a great guy. I'm not taking anything.
Right.
And I don't think he would think I'm taking anything away from him.
Right.
But he said it and repeated it so often that it gets attributed to him. And now he may be the first to put it this way, but you can get anything you want in life if you help others get what they want.
Oh, that's what it is.
And the more you help others, the more it's going to come back to you.
So when did you first follow him and learn this?
No, well, I knew it.
You knew it before.
And here's the great thing.
Right, that's what I was getting
about, and I love motivational speakers that are humble. Okay? Zig was humble. He wasn't trying to tell you that he invented some new thing. But he had a great way to put it, to rephrase it, to make it, to communicate it.
Right.
And so I knew that owner, the restaurant owner I'm telling you about.
Right.
His name was Donnie. And Donnie, if you're listening, you have no idea the impact.
Yeah. That he had.
And you do now, but Donnie had a deal where he made it available to all the employees.
Oh, nice.
That if you wanted to, but you had to say you wanted to. He didn't force you to do it.
Right.
He didn't put all the employees through it. You had to
say you wanted it.
Yeah. That he put you through the Zig Ziglar See You at the Top program, which is a very basic motivational type.
Was that your first job?
No.
You'd had jobs before
I had jobs before. As a matter of fact, I had some colorful jobs.
When did you start working? What age?
Well, I started working, my first paycheck, I think I was 12. But
you're not one of those that sold the empty envelope to someone with it.
I was a junior counselor at a camp.
Oh.
I was a junior counselor at a Jewish day camp.
Okay.
Which, how much time do you have? This can be a long one. It already is, but so, and junior counselors, I got a paycheck.
Wow.
So I guess it's a job.
At 12, yeah.
That meant that I assisted
the others.
Yeah. And then once I was 15, I became a
counselor.
Senior counselor.
Senior.
And I didn't lose that job. Well, maybe I did. I didn't get fired. But I didn't get asked back. Because I had a sense of humor. And 2 incidents there. And I didn't get written up. I didn't even get called to the principal's office. but I think this is probably why I didn't get asked back, is one day there was a tornado warning, and this was, the day camp was at a temple, and the building was a massive building, and there were different places that were the safe zones. So I was in a kitchen with 8 little Jewish kids during the tornado warning, taking shelter, and I just brought up a stat as we're all talking, and the kids are a little bit scared, but not too bad. But I said, I was reading a magazine article the other day, and 1 out of every 8 Jewish kids dies in a tornado. And then I did this. 1, 2, there's 8 kids in here. So that was one. And then the other one, and I don't think, the coordinator of the camp may not have found out about that one, where I basically told the kids, one of us is going to die today. But the other one that the coordinator of the camp did hear me say was, we took a field trip to the stockyards in Fort Worth. And I was in charge of probably a dozen of the kids were in my group. And we're all walking behind some horses. And the coordinator of the camp instructed all of us, all the counselors, tell your kids not to walk too close to the hind legs of the horses. Common sense, right? And one of my kids said, well, why can't we walk? Why do we have to get away from the horses? And my answer, without skipping a beat, was, well, horses don't like little Jewish kids.
Oh, my, you're terrible.
So anyway, so that was my first paycheck was as junior counselor at that camp. But then I had a job at Grandy's Fried Chicken. Do you remember Grandy's? On Campbell and Central, if you're in the Metroplex. It's not there anymore. But I was 15 years old. I just got my moped. And I lied about my age.
To get there.
To get that job. And which is great. I got the job very easily and very quickly. But my first day, they told me I had to bring my birth certificate. So I got an X-Acto knife.
And you fixed your birth
certificate.
certificate.
I didn't doctor a copy of I doctored my birth certificate. And they didn't really care. I mean, they didn't look at it. They just needed it to make a copy for their files. If I'd known that, it would have been different, but I didn't know that. So Grandy's Fried Chicken. Then the next job I got was bagging groceries at Winn-Dixie. And the reason I got that job, the reason I left Grandy's was, I don't know if you've ever worked with fried chicken.
No, I haven't.
But you leave the place smelling like...
Other than making it myself, yeah.
You leave the place smelling like dirty oil. And when you're making it, your arms are covered in flour and batter. And
you got tired of that?
Oh, gosh, especially if you have any hair. Yeah, I got very tired of that. So I got a job at Winn-Dixie, and I advanced pretty quickly the way a 16-year-old would advance from bagger to stalker. I became like the #1 part-time stock boy there. That was the only job I quit with no notice. Very unprofessional. Because the truck came in. When the truck comes in, that's when the stalkers work.
Right.
And it's hard work. And the lead stalker, full-time stalker, here's the thing. When you're in those industries, you don't really want to advance too far, because the truth of the matter is the people that advance far are the ones that don't have any other options. You know what I mean? The lead stalker at Winn-Dixie was a high school dropout who was working full-time at Winn-Dixie. And so they're not really great examples to follow. And this dude got into it with the manager on the night the truck came, and the manager rightfully sent him home, which meant double the work for me. So the way I looked at it was like, I'm the one being punished, not him. He gets a full-time salary. You sent him home, he's getting paid. no, I'm doing double the work for the same salary. That's crap. So I went on a lunch break and just never came back. Because I was...
Revenge. You were angry?
Well, no, it was logic.
Logic.
Yeah, my logic was, if you're going to send him home, and I'm going to be doing his job plus mine...
Without pay.
You know, and you didn't really punish him. He got to go home with pay because he called you a cuss word. Mm-hmm. That's not right. So I just never went back. As a matter of fact, I think I left my last paycheck there. Then I worked at a hot dog place in Richardson Square Mall, which I loved. And within 2 weeks, I was the assistant manager of that place. Mm-hmm. To make things great, they were in between managers. Uh-huh. So I was actually managing that place. I was running a blackjack game out of the back room.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You don't put a teenager in charge.
Right.
And so I got that job. And then I quit that job with notice. I was a very good employee. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the uniform. Mm-hmm. Because I had to wear a visor with a hot dog on it and a brown apron with a hot dog on it. And I didn't like that, so.
Mm-hmm. You knew you could do better.
I quit that job and got the job at this restaurant that was just opening up. I was probably like the third employee they hired. And
the one where the mentor,
yeah.
The guy was...
Yeah. So that was a long-ass story to get to.
Well, no, but that explains a lot of... Because you got a lot of experience in all of those.
And I got to see different management types.
Yes, you witnessed a lot.
And
if you were watching, which you were.
Yes.
Mm-hmm, you were learning.
Yes, and I, like the grocery store taught me a whole lot. Mm-hmm. That there are certain industries where you really don't want to. If you advance in that industry, that's not a good sign. It's kind of funny, like, you probably never watched You're Above This. Did you ever watch The Office on TV?
No.
Okay, The Office was about a paper manufacturer, like copy paper, and a sales force that's selling
the copy paper.
And that's just it's not a good job. And like one of the characters in the show, they're trying to give him a nickname, and it's one of those like confessional shows where it was completely fake. It was a comedy, but they would interview the characters of the show like in character, and they get them into the little confessional, and he explains, I don't want them to give me a nickname because once you get a nickname, you're here for life. and so very quickly I realized that I did not want to advance in the grocery industry, even though there's managers that make a fortune.
Right.
The restaurant industry also.
Right.
It's got its place. But unless if you're just like mid-level, that means
you're doing a lot of
life
work.
didn't go the way you wanted it to go, or the way I wanted my life to go. Mm-hmm. So you learn that. But the other thing you learn is, I'm talking way too much here, but this is fun. The other thing I learned was that the more you know how to do, the less you have to do. And that's a good and bad lesson to learn.
Well, yeah, because it's your choice how you use that lesson.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. It is. If you're doing it so that you can get out of work, that's not the way to do it. But if you let it happen, and the example I'll use is when I was a cook, I had to, at closing time, I had to clean the grill and I had to drain the fryers and just do all these dirty jobs.
Right.
But once I became the cook that knew how to balance the register, I could cook and then leave the cleaning to someone else, and I could go balance the register. So I'm still working.
Right.
I'm just not doing work that I really didn't want to do in the first place. If you're the cook that knows how to maintain the menu or to put together the specials for tomorrow or whatever, that can get you out of doing
the cleanup
work that is, quote, beneath you because there's more important work that you can do and someone else.
So when did you learn that? When did you learn? As the assistant
I learned that,
cook, did you watch the other cook do that?
No, that was accidentally learned, as it was a side effect of me wanting to learn what everyone else's positions were.
Okay.
You know
and that
what I mean?
came natural, right?
Yeah, I wanted to learn everyone else's position, and then a result of that was, oh look, Mark knows how to do this. He can run the register. He knows how to close things out.
Right.
So that was just a side effect. My intent wasn't to become a manager. My intent was to become the best cook I could be.
Right. Well, and see, that's where people get mixed up in their careers. They get a job, and then they complain about the job.
Yeah.
And they see everything that's wrong with the job, and they forget to be in gratitude for the job and for the money they're getting, and they get in the place of what they don't like, and that it's something they have to do, instead of going in with the attitude of, I'm here to be of service. I want to do the best job I can possibly do, and I'm very grateful to have this job, even if it's not one that you want to continue with.
You know what? It's really interesting as we talk about this, because as I'm describing this, that restaurant experience is kind of the opposite of my radio method. Because my restaurant method was, I want to be the best at the position that they've given me. My radio method, and I worked with intent to be the best cook at that restaurant. They hired me to be a cook, and I intentionally wanted to be the best. In radio, they hired me as a weekend part-time producer, and I knew that that's not what I wanted to be. So with intention, I did everything to get to where I wanted to be. And so they're completely opposite plans, but the thing that they both had in common was I had a very focused intent.
Yes. You knew what you wanted.
Yeah.
And you made the steps to get there.
And that's the other thing, like in radio. And this is, man, you're doing a great job here.
I know.
Because the thing
I'm not patting myself on the shoulder either.
The thing that happened in radio was I never intended to be in radio. And once I got in radio, I never intended in being in management, and I never intended on being a talk show host. I wanted to be a full-time producer, full-time behind the scenes. I didn't need to be on the air. Most people get into radio because they want to have a talk show.
Right.
That wasn't me. I wanted to be the best producer I could be. And then once I did that, I got the opportunity to go into management. And then once I did that, I got the opportunity to host talk shows. And once I did that, I got the opportunity to be a full-time talk show host. But never, the only intent that I had was to be the best producer. And I did everything in my power to be the best producer, but that leads to other things. So if I'm going to give a lesson, the lesson is have intentions and follow them. Do everything in your power to do that. And that's kind of what I was telling this high school senior the other day. Couple things, but the intention thing, but not the way I just described it. I wish you and I had the session last week. But I think I basically told him the same things, but you drew it out of me a little bit better. A lot better, actually. But the other thing I told him was, if this is what you want to pursue, then you've got to understand and go into it with your eyes wide open about the impact it's going to have on other things in your life. Because it's going to impact, if you want to be and you can insert the profession. Doesn't matter what the profession is. But if you want to be a radio talk show host, you've got to understand that you're going to be working for nothing, for minimum wage, for quite some time, and you still may not achieve your goal. He said, I understand that. And I said, well, yeah, but what you may not understand is the impact that's going to have on other things in your life. Because you're going to go to college, you're going to have a 4-year degree, and you're going to be making minimum wage. And that might be okay with you. It may be okay with your parents. But if you want a relationship, that's not going to be okay with a woman who wants to have a long-term relationship with you. Or you're going to have to find a very special woman
right.
that is willing to help you follow your dream or understand that this is the situation. And then even if you do find that woman's going to have parents. And the parents are going to say, what does your boyfriend do? And how much is he making? And what's his ultimate goal? And what are the chances of him achieving it? So you need to you need to go into it, and that's just one example.
Right.
The other example is you're going to have friends that you went to college with that you're all going to graduate at the same time, and they're going to be making immediately 3 times the money you're making, 4 times the money you're making. And if your dream is to be a radio talk show host, you're going to have to understand you're not going to be able to keep up with them in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Right. When the reality hits. So
just because you know it and you know what your dream is and you know what the path is, you also need to know how that's going to impact everything else. And you may be driving Uber. You may be doing DoorDash.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you know what? You may go to a DoorDash delivery where the guy that answers the door is someone you went to college with. Mm-hmm. That's making 5 times your salary.
Well, and it could also be the guy that hires him.
Yeah. But, you know.
For a better paying talk show or sportscaster job.
Yeah. Exactly. But you need to know that, and you need to be prepared.
Well, and I think that's also another misconception that a lot of the younger ones have. Well, maybe not, I shouldn't say younger ones, a lot of people have. They think they can quit a job and start their own job.
Yeah.
They don't understand that you don't start making that huge money when you start your own business.
No, and they don't necessarily understand that just because they're the greatest, just because they're the greatest producer at a radio station,
right,
doesn't mean they can go off and be an independent producer that doesn't have.
Mm-hmm. You got to have your customer base, and you have to build it. Usually, it's not something that's automatic.
No, I will. I told the kid this too. I said, but here's the good thing about where you're at is I'm going to tell you that really the only chance you have of achieving your dream is right now, because you're in a position where you don't have kids. Mm-hmm. You don't have a wife. You don't have additional responsibilities. You've got parents that understand your dream, that are willing to support your dream, and they're probably going to do a lot in their power to a certain point to help you get to that point.
Right.
If you put it off and you get married and have 1 kid, your dream is over.
Well, the dream...
Because you've got other things...
The dream has changed. He's let that dream go for the dream of a family.
Yeah. And so there are certain things, and I hope I would tell my own kid this and prepare him or her for this, is that there's going to be a time period in your life where you do have the freedom to do exactly what you want to do and try to achieve the unachievable. Mm-hmm. But then there's also going to be a certain point where you've got to do the responsible thing and adjust.
Right.
But right now is the best time to try and accomplish and chase that dream. And it doesn't mean that you stop dreaming.
Right.
It just means it's going to be much, 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 much more difficult.
Yes, because that's your prime opportunity. I tell a lot of my clients, I say, the world's your oyster right now. Why are you so down on everything? Yeah. You're single. You're making an income you're providing for yourself. You can save. You can do all kinds of things. Why are you so upset? Mm-hmm. And they can't see that because they're hung up on, I hate my job, I don't like this, I don't want to do this. And they're seeing everything that's wrong instead of, as you have given the example of, you strive to do your best at a job, you're grateful for the job, and you keep flowing and moving.
Yeah, I think that, and to go on topics that you and I usually discuss, and we talked about it here, it's something else I'm grateful that I was born with, or is the ability to understand that. And I will tell you that when I got out of college, I was chasing money. But I also knew that that I was not going to be able to make the kind of money I wanted to make. This another side. This is where I think I'm lucky.
This is where reality hit.
It's
awareness.
It's where I think I've been very fortunate and very, for lack of a better word, lucky that I've put myself in situations. Because I knew that going to the corporate world out of college, I wanted to make my first $1 million in 5 years.
Right.
And going to the corporate world, I wasn't going to do that.
Right.
So I went to business for myself and I guess you could say I struggled for the first couple months. But I was willing to take that risk because I didn't have anyone depending on me.
Right.
And I knew that ultimately, when I say struggle, I did struggle. Now I'm looking back on it now. Even though we weren't planning on making money, we did make money running that store.
Well, did you have a bed to sleep in? Did you have shelter and food and water?
But I was taking a salary cut. My cash flow from the job I left to running the store, especially for the first few months, was a salary cut. But I did have everything I needed. And I had all sorts of convenience store food I could eat.
Right.
Sorry, well, mouth's dry. But I was able to learn pretty quickly also that chasing that first $1 million, even in business for myself, meant that I was going to be working 85, 90 hours a week. And I didn't necessarily like that.
Did you change your desire at that point?
Well, yes and no. I still knew that was the vehicle. But it kind of,
how'd you switch it?
We're going way too long. Here's what happened. It's so funny the way things happen. And you're going to talk about the universe when I get through telling you this. We sold that store. We bought a restaurant in Louisville. Didn't do anywhere near as well. We didn't make money. We bought it with intentions of flipping it. We didn't make money while we were running. We just kind of spun our wheels, but we remodeled. We ended up basically just breaking even. It was a waste. Monetarily, it was just spinning our wheels. We're neutral. Sold it. But while I was there was a group of regular customers that I had that were men in their 40s and 50s and maybe early 60s that would come in. Great. They were a blast. They're a lot of fun. I was in my early 20s, maybe mid-20s at this point. And I never asked them, but they would come in and they'd stay from like 11:30 until like 3 in the afternoon. And I thought, that's the life I want. I want to put myself in a position at some point where if I want to spend 3 hours at some restaurant just talking with my friends in the middle of the day, I can do that. Fast forward 25 years, and that's where I'm at now.
Right.
Now I'm working my ass off, on weekends and
other times,
late nights and
right,
all that. But I am in a position
where if you want to do that, you can.
Yeah. And but if I didn't work those 85 hours a week at the convenience store, if I didn't spin my wheels at the restaurant,
right,
and see those guys,
right,
and it wasn't like that was not. It wasn't my intent. I didn't do things intentionally to put myself in a position where I could be what I would call lazy 4 hours a day.
That is not being lazy.
But it gave me the idea. That's kind of, they could go to the lake if they wanted to. They can, so I wanted to put myself in a position eventually to where I could schedule my day.
So, well, we've already gone too far. I was going to go into lazy.
Go ahead.
So, what do you call lazy? What's your definition of lazy?
Lazy is expecting the world, the universe, to provide for you without you putting forth any effort.
So were those guys doing that?
No.
You called them lazy?
No. I put it in air quotes. You didn't.
Oh,
you didn't
I didn't see that
in the audio
okay.
podcast.
I didn't see that.
And you know what? I know that I don't know what they did for a living, but I do know that, or at least my thought is, they were not lazy. At some point, they worked their asses off, or they were working their asses off behind the scenes to put themselves in a position where they could do.
So you do have the belief that you have to work hard.
Oh, yes. And I do have the belief that you have to work hard with intent and you have to work smart. And working hard doesn't necessarily mean, sweating or, it can.
What does it mean?
It means working hard to achieve the goal that you have. It means being willing to put in the work. It means that if you are a ditch digger, being the best ditch digger you can be.
Right.
It means not taking shortcuts until you create your own shortcut. Does that make sense? That's kind of...
I'm still not getting what you mean by working hard, because lots of people find their success without working hard.
Do they?
Yes.
Well, who? Give me an example.
Well,
I'm not debating you yet.
I know, because we're still not clear on what the definition of working hard is. I am assuming, from what little definition you have given me so far, that you have the belief that the collective holds that you must work hard or you'll never succeed at anything. And that means that you nearly kill yourself.
No.
Okay, so clarify.
Let's reverse engineer this.
Okay.
You talked about the word success.
Mm-hmm.
To me, success has nothing to do with your paycheck. It has nothing, even success at work, has nothing to do with your paycheck. It has nothing to do, if you own a business, with your balance sheet or your income statement.
Okay. And
the example I will give you, and I've brought her up on this podcast before, is a girl that did a podcast called The Precious Mess. Sil, I hope you're listening to this, an hour and 13 minutes into it. But this woman is very motivated. She's been through a ton in life, I was going to say like everyone, but she's been through it.
A lot.
Yes. And she is, in the last year or so, a little bit less, gone into business for herself. She has 2 sons. And one day last month, I sent her a text message. I'm just really proud of her. Because of what she's overcome. And we're good friends. And I sent her a message telling her how proud I was of her. And she, I don't think she would have a problem with me saying this, so I'm going to say it. Hell, our podcast was called Precious Mess. And she talked about that her life was a mess, but she knows that she's a human being and she's precious. She suffers from time to time, or maybe all the time, and she overcomes it from time to time. She probably suffers all the time from this, and from time to time she overcomes it. Does that make sense? Of kind of insecurity, questioning her abilities, questioning herself. And so I sent her a message saying, I'm just so proud of you. And her response back was, thank you, I really needed that right now. But can I ask you why? And I responded back to her, and if I didn't have a ton of text messages with her, I'd read it exactly what I wrote. But I said, because, Syl, you're already successful. Mm-hmm. I said, I know how you are. And whether your business fails or succeeds, quotes, you've already succeeded.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I know you're going to judge yourself on your balance sheet. You're going to judge yourself on how many roofs, she's a roofer, how many roofs you sell. You're going to judge yourself on all sorts of other things. And I'm not saying don't do that. But I am going to tell you this. Mm-hmm. You have already succeeded. You have succeeded in showing your sons that their mom is willing to go out there and take a risk. Mm-hmm. That their mom is willing to go out there and put herself on the line.
Right.
And their mom is willing to go out there and stake a claim for herself. Mm-hmm. You've succeeded.
Right. And that's another thing that people get confused on. Success is only your success. You don't compare. You don't bring in other people and what they're doing or where they're at. Because when you start comparing, you're looking at everything you're doing, you think you're doing wrong. You're looking at the negative again. And success is in your own head.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, and you're... The way this got brought up, and you asked, or you said...
The working hard.
That people have been successful without working hard. Well, to me, with my definition of success, is, no, you earn your success. Now, there are people out there, and I thought this is where you were going to go, that are born into, the Lucky Sperm Club. They were born into wealth.
Right.
To me, those people, and I'm not discounting them, those aren't successful people.
Oh, really?
Those are fortunate people.
Oh.
You earn your success. Now, those people can be successful.
Okay.
And part of them being successful is working to keep that fortune.
Right.
And working not to blow it. Because I think there's one of the, take a little bit off topic, but one of the greatest coaches in sports, the greatest managers in business, a lot of times they're given a successful franchise. They're given the players that they don't have to, the coach doesn't have to do anything, and those guys are just going to win. But you know what? The coach that wins with those guys that other people gave them, there's still a level of success in him knowing when not to mess with something. That's working. And you do kind of have to work at knowing that, okay, I've got a good situation here. I'm not going to blow it.
So we're back to the definition of working hard. And I don't think we have agreed on the definition of that. That's where our disconnect is. Because I think what you're referring to, say again what your definition is.
Is working towards a goal, working towards that goal with every action that you can do.
Okay.
Questioning, is this going, where is this putting me to my ultimate goal? Okay, for example, the work I do, depending on your definition of hard, this isn't hard work.
Okay.
Being on a roof, nailing shingles on a roof, to some people, that's the definition of hard.
Okay, so that could be the difference.
Digging ditches is hard work.
Okay.
Labor. To me, you can work hard with your brain.
Right.
And that's what I do, is I work hard with my brain. And questioning, okay, is this putting me closer to any goal that I have? Or am I serving my client? Am I helping? So it's with intent.
Okay, so I think what the common definition of gotta work hard to make it in this world, is you ignore your own health and you work 60 and 70 and 90 hours a week.
That's not my definition, but
okay. Okay, that's what we needed to clear up.
That is a common definition, and that's just, That's flawed.
Yes, I
and
agree.
I'm not going to say I didn't used to think that.
Mm-hmm.
But once again,
What changed your mind?
Well, the lesson I learned working in the convenience store, 85 hours a week.
Right, trying to make $1 million.
Yeah. Is it?
What did it do to you?
Well, it didn't really do anything to me other than I was able to look at it and realize that that's not a schedule you can keep up for life.
Right.
The same girl I'm talking about with the roofing, one of her deals is, and it's good right now, is she wants to learn everything. She's, I mean, a lot of roofers, the business model is the person in charge doesn't get on roofs. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing at all wrong with that. As a matter of fact, you kind of need that. And you have people that are dedicated to be project managers. But she wants to learn everything, just like I was talking about the restaurant.
She needs to know, yeah.
And so she's always posting social media with her on roofs. And I am trying to get her off the roof. And
yeah, there's a point she needs to come off.
And she's like, don't worry about me falling. I said, look, I'm not really worried about you falling. She's athletic. She's fine. I'm not worried about you falling, but here's the situation. At some point, no matter what, she's a spin instructor. She's in great shape. But she's also 41 years old. And I said, at some point, you're not going to be able to get up on the roof. Okay, whether it's an injury, whether you fall off a roof, whether you pull a muscle, it doesn't matter. You don't want to bank your whole brand on the fact that you're an attractive female that can get up there and tarp a roof. Okay, because you're not going to be able to do that for the rest of your life. But you can be the business owner that can organize and that can be in charge of this roofing empire. So I just think at some point, you need to rebrand. And this is a podcast, so I can say this.
Yes.
And I hope if you've been listening for an hour and 22 minutes, you know this is a joke. It's not racist. It's not racist.
Oh no! Here we go.
On Easter Sunday, she posted a religious post about Jesus. And I responded to her. I made a little graphic of a picture of Jesus underneath the frame of a house. And I said, you need to remember that Jesus was a carpenter. He stayed off of roofs. He let the Mexicans do that job.
Oh, you didn't.
She's Mexican. So it's okay, right? But I was like, Jesus didn't get on the roofs, okay? You need to get off the roofs. But that's working hard and smart, using your brain to know.
Well, if she owns the company,
and
you can't stay as one of the workers
and
grow it.
Working 85 hours at the convenience store, I knew I'm not going to want, or at some point, I'm not going to be able to work 85 hours, not because of my health necessarily, but if I want to get married, that's not going to work.
Yeah, there's no time left for anything.
And, even though...
Well, that's not even healthy to be working 90 hours.
Yeah, but once again, it's not being on a roof. It's sitting behind a cash register.
You can't... I don't think that doesn't matter. I mean, yes, there's some differences, but what I'm looking at is the health of your physical body, soul, and you, and working for 90 hours a week is not healthy.
Yeah.
That is not holding your energy and keeping it healthy, any of that stuff.
You should have seen what I was doing with the other.
I don't even want to know, do I?
I was dating. You could have put me on any episode of Jerry Springer with the women I was dating. So I'm working 85 hours a week dating crazy women. And when I wasn't going on dates, I was closing the convenience store at 10 and driving down to Shreveport and playing craps. And then driving back and opening up the convenience store at 6.
The next morning.
Yeah, I lived in my 20s.
It sounds like it.
That might be why.
You think?
But To be successful, I think that's work. Even if you're born into success, you've got to keep it. You've got to, if you're born into a wealthy family.
I see what you're saying. Yes.
It may not be work as the general public will look at it, but there's something to be said about not screwing it up.
Well, some have so much money they never have to. It doesn't matter if they screw it up.
I think we think that, and maybe it's because I've been so close to athletes that make a fortune and blow it.
Well, yes. I have people living paycheck to paycheck that's over six figures.
They're still making, they're making $200,000 a year, but living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And some of us can look at that and say, there's no excuse for that, but...
Hey.
And you know what? There isn't an excuse for it, but I can see how it can happen.
Oh, it does not matter. I have seen this over and over in my life. It does not matter the amount of money that you have. Every range of it has the same money problems. I'm broke, or they don't know how to manage money, or they need more. Whatever it is.
Well, when you look at it, too, in your own situation, my ex-wife, I remember when the first raise that she got when we were dating, she was thrilled to get to $32,000. And, I can say this about Sherry. Sherry is a great, great worker. And she's always advanced. She's now making well over $100,000 a year. But I can promise you, and I don't think she'd have a problem with me saying this, she has just as much money saved up at her more than six-figure salary as she did when she was making 32. And that's not an insult. It's just the way, I think it's the way most people live.
It is. And that's unfortunate. I mean, but it is the way they live.
Yeah.
And that's a choice, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely is.
But then, is it lack of knowing better?
It's lack of preparation. It's lack of
self-control.
I hate that.
I know, I hate that word too.
That sounds very judgmental, but it is a lack of self-control.
How do we get self-control? That'd be a good topic.
Well, it's a lack of not being. This is we're going to do another episode on this today. It's a lack of being taught, not about money, but about philosophy of life. And where I'm going, and I don't know how much to save for the next episode, but it's a lack of being taught to live beneath your means, no matter what your means are. And the example I always use is the Rangers baseball team had a center fielder that came to Texas from Washington. He played baseball with the Nationals, and he was a free agent. And the Nationals offered him like a 4-year, $60 million contract, $15 million a year. And he thought he was worth more than that. So he turned that deal down, and he came to Texas for a 1-year deal worth $12 million. So he left $60 million on the table. Well, he left $48 million on the table to come here for 1 year for $12 million, so he could prove himself. And next year he could sign a much bigger contract than 4 years, 60. Okay, it's a calculated risk. And I'll never forget, this is such a great lesson, but it was too late in my life to learn it. But the way he taught it was just genius to me. My co-host and I get to Ranger Spring Training to cover it, and we're doing our shows there. And obviously the first person we want to see in the clubhouse
it's him.
Is this guy, because he's the biggest acquisition for the Rangers in the off season. So we go, and my co-host, who I love to this day, part of the reason I love him is why people hate him, is he just spouts off and will say anything he wants to say, and I like that.
He's being him.
I like that a lot. And I mean, it's the first question in the interview. Steve says to him, "You left a lot of money on the table. That's a pretty questionable decision you made." And it was kind of judging the way he said it.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian Desmond, the guy that, he said, "Look, I'm going to make $12 million this year. When I was young, my parents taught me, and my wife's parents taught her, to live beneath your means. I think we can make $12 million work. We're going to be just fine." Uh-huh. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter how much you're making. It's all relative. And if you know that lesson, you could be making, and that's the other thing. And do you know the name Dave Ramsey?
Yes.
Okay, I love listening to Dave Ramsey because it makes me feel better about my finances. When people call in and they're like, "Dave, I make $35 a year and I bought this Porsche and I got I've got $100,000 credit card debt and I'm just not I feel real good about my situation
Right.
when I hear that." But he does a show at least once a month, or used to, where he only has millionaires call in. And they're not millionaires like Mark Cuban. Mm-hmm. They're not, or like Bill Gates or Zuckerberg, they're everyday people. Mm-hmm. And he asks them, "What's the most money you ever made in 1 year?" And most of them are like 50,000, 60,000. And you're a millionaire right now? Yeah, because they saved their money. Mm-hmm. They did it the right way. And then he'll say, "What's the most you ever spent on a car?" And they're like 12,000. Uh-huh. Back in the day, it was like 7,000. "Have you ever spent more than $50 on a pair of jeans?" No. Mm-hmm. Things like that. Are simple lessons. It's not hard.
Right.
But it's hard to execute.
Well, the ego takes charge.
The ego and keeping up.
Yeah, well, that's the ego. The ego wants to keep up with the Joneses. The ego wants to, and I'm not saying that this isn't a stage of development of the soul, too, that everybody may go through, but wanting flashy stuff, wanting excellent clothes, wanting the name brands, all of these things are the ego. And that's not to say that you don't have a healed person that enjoys wearing those things and is at a place that is okay with that. I'm talking about the majority. The majority of people can't afford it, yet they have to have it because their ego says they need it.
Well, and that's where, and this is why I'm not hard on people that make these mistakes, because I've made them.
Right, we all do.
But I've seen it in locker rooms where, minimum salary for these professional athletes is huge. Everyone in a professional locker room should be filthy rich. But what happens is ego, as you said, and you did a good job correcting me on, or adding to the keeping up with the Joneses, because what you have is like NFL minimum in the National Football League. I think it's like $900,000 right now for 1 year. So if you're the worst if you're the lowest paid in that locker room, you're still a millionaire.
Right.
Right? Except you could have a locker right next to the guy that's making $25 million a year. And you're making your $1 million a year, but you're trying to keep up with this guy.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of fortunes get lost, and it's a real good, it's happening less and less now, I think, and I hope, because they're getting taught by leagues and teams and unions that you need to do a better job planning. But when the millionaire tries to keep up with the multimillionaire, $1 million isn't that much money.
Right.
And you can take that down to a lesser scale. But it's all relative. It's all ratios. And, if your neighbors get a pool, that doesn't mean you have to get a pool.
Right. Hope you get invited over to their pool.
Yeah. And as you get older, you realize the people that are wealthy didn't necessarily make a lot of money on a yearly basis, but they spent their money wisely and they
Right.
invested their money wisely.
Right. Well, that's a whole other story on making your money make money for you instead of you working hard physically to make money.
Yeah, but that's still working hard to figure out
how to do that.
Yeah, and to have the self-discipline
to do it.
Do it. And, you know, I think it's kind of cool, too. I work with a couple financial advisors now. Mm-hmm. And both of them, I've asked them the question straight out. They're so much more prepared for their retirement than they are for tomorrow. Meaning that they know once they retire, they've got the money. Mm-hmm. But they still need to earn money until then they get to that point. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of a cool position to be in, because then you can kind of look at retirement as the last day of school and summer vacations coming up.
Right.
It's not a, what the hell am I going to do?
Well, yes and no. There's two sides to that, as you well know. And the other side is, what if you die tomorrow? Uh-huh. What would you save all that for?
That's the side I'm living right now. What's the point of saving? I'm going to die.
Well, it is. I mean, it's just different ways of looking at it and different ways of choosing to live your life.
And I do look at it in the non-healthy way. That.
Who says it's non-healthy?
Well, here's where I'm at. Is I truly believe I've got a business I can do until the day I die. Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of that way too.
So, and I don't necessarily want to retire. I love what I do.
Me too.
So having money to travel and do all that. The other thing is if I do my business right, I can keep the business and travel. Mm-hmm. If I train the right people and am willing to give up control.
Yes.
Which I have a hard time doing.
Yes,
if I'm willing to trust other people.
Right.
Is something I'm working on, and I need to get to that point. Mm-hmm. So even though it should be, saving for retirement really is not a priority in my life, and it may come back and bite me.
Right. I mean, yes.
There's no doubt it may come back and bite me. Mm-hmm. I do feel kind of inadequate when I talk to these financial advisors.
Oh, well, you're comparing yourself, though.
Well, yeah, but I know the responsible thing to do. It would be responsible for me to save for retirement. And I could do it. And it's not that I don't. I could do a lot better than I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, I think we've run out of satellite time.
That's possible. Okay.
Do you even know what that's from, running out of satellite time?
Do I know what that means?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so, and I'm not sure if it's still like this, but TV stations, news organizations, they would have to rent satellite time to do live broadcasts.
Oh.
So every once in a while you would hear,
running out of satellite time.
Hey, we've run out of satellite time. And back in the day, if you watched closely, sometimes they literally would run out of satellite time and just cut off.
It just cut off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. So, I didn't know that was why.
Yep. So anyways, KathyDCarter.com is where you want to go. I want to thank you for listening to 98 minutes of us talking. I enjoyed it. I hope you will too. Please share it with your friends and family. I think there's a lot in this episode.
Oh, yes, there was.
That I hope people can take
learn from.
Yeah, learn from.